I want to welcome you guys once again to the International Third World Leaders Association Digital Forum series on crisis management. My name is Myles Munroe Jr. I'm the chairman of the board for the International Third World Leaders Association. And I just want to welcome you and thank you for taking the time out to join us this morning for our fourth and final session of our digital forum series on crisis management. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today. I'm excited. I hope you are as well. The subject matter, I think, is relevant, very relevant for what we're experiencing in our world today and what a lot of us are going to experience through our lifetime. And I think this is create a good conversation for us to be having. I'm hoping that you would learn quite a bit today, things that you can apply to your life. Before we get started, I want to just allow you to see a brief introduction of our organization and who we are and what we're about. And at the end of it, I'm going to give you some contacts so that you can reach out to us if you want to get more information about us or if you would like to join our organization.
Hi, my name is Myles Munroe Jr., and I'm the chairman of the board for the International Third World Leaders Association. Our organization was birthed to respond to and address the critical need for quality, effective leadership development and training in the emerging developing nations.
Our vision is to establish a global network of leaders from every discipline,
committed to the highest standards of excellence in leadership training, personal development,
mutual accountability, and fraternal support, implementing relevant and innovative leadership philosophy based on time-tested precepts, principles, and values.
Our mission is to influence the destiny of developing third world nations through leadership training,
personal development, supportive relationships, and global networking.
Our purpose is to provide transformational solutions
in response to the dynamic leadership needs of the emerging third world developing nations.
Our goal is to cultivate leadership commitment
to produce leaders
dedicated to the empowerment of their people,
the progressive well-being of their citizens,
and the betterment of their nation.
The strategic approach captured in the slogan coined by our founder, Dr. Myles Munroe,
was transforming followers into leaders and leaders into agents of change. Our focus is national development through transformational leadership.
Transforming nations, communities from the inside out.
Join us in ushering in this new era of our organization.
We are tasked with carrying this vision forward.
And we are devoted to ensuring that we leave an unwavering legacy.
The organization that produces effective leaders
with global reach and influence.
Right, well, it's just a little bit about our organization. Third World Leaders Association. We're an organization about training leaders. We are leadership based. We have a large variety of individuals from around the world, from different regions, different countries, different backgrounds, different professions. But we all unite with one goal, and that's teaching leadership principles and training future leaders to be effective leaders, efficient leaders in their families, in their societies, in their countries, and in the world. So if you want more information about us or you'd like to join our organization, you can email us. Our email address is ITWLA@bfmmm.com. That's ITWLA@bfmmm.com. So I want to welcome you again. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today. I'm super excited for you guys to hear them. All of them are a part of our organization. One thing I am pleased with throughout this entire forum, we've been using the speakers all are individuals who are a part of our organization. So if you have been tuning in for the past 3 sessions and here for the final one, you would have met and heard from a lot of individuals, young, old, male, female. We just wanted to showcase who we are and what we represent and what we can bring to the table as far as assisting with leadership training the best that we can. So today we have 3 special speakers. I want to introduce each of them for you. I'll just read their bios really quickly. We have Pastor Jean Petit-Frere. He hails from Haiti. We have Ms. Charisa Munroe, who is currently in the United States, but she born and raised in the Bahamas. And we have Pastor Pepe Ramnath, who lives in Florida, but originally from Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm just going to introduce each of them for you, and I'm going to start with Pastor John. So Pastor John is the founder and senior pastor of Family Tabernacle of Praise in Carrefour, Haiti, and president founder of Shabbat International Ministry. After studying theology both in Haiti and Jamaica, Pastor Petit-Frere then continued his studies in practical theology and biblical counseling until obtaining a doctorate in ministerial studies. Currently, he is a PhD student in philosophy and social change at the Oasis Institute of Higher Learning in Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. Petit-Frere is the author of several books written in the French language and has also produced 4 praise and worship albums in the French and Creole languages. He is strongly involved in community, civic, and citizen actions for the advancement and development of his native land. Pastor Petit-Frere is the husband of only 1 wife and the father of 3 adult children. Next, we have Ms. Charisa Munroe. She is an influential and motivational speaker who is activating action in individuals and organizations across the world, sharing the foundational message of purpose and hope that was instilled in her by her parents, Dr. Myles and Ruth Munroe. Expanding on the knowledge gained at home, Charisa earned several degrees, including a Bachelor of Social Work, Master of Social Work, and Master of Business Administration from esteemed universities. As a licensed clinical social worker, she is able to bring empathy and advocacy to the business principles of development and growth. It is this unique approach that supports her effective work in various nations and sectors with diverse individuals. Charisa has broken beyond the 4 walls of the religious realm and has taken the message of leadership, mentoring, purpose, and valiant hope to other organizational domains, including social service and government agencies and other leading businesses around the world. Charisa currently serves as president of the Myles and Ruth Munroe Foundation and vice president of Munroe Global Incorporated, both of which propel her to add fuel to the fire she is sparking in the hearts and souls of many. She's president and CEO of Charisa Munroe LLC, a personal brand company that serves to empower lives and help others to define, develop, and deploy their purpose for greatness. She counts it a great honor to lead others into reaching the meritorious level of their lives. Charisa is a new up-and-coming author with a new release book entitled 31-Day Devotional Empowerment for Everyday Living. And finally, we have Dr. Pepe Ramnath. He's the senior pastor of an epigenetic and eco-environmentally training facility, Miramar Kingdom Community Center. He was personally mentored by Dr. Myles Munroe for over 25 years. He graduated with a bachelor's degree in microbiology, a master's degree in environmental science, a specialized doctor of philosophy and environmental microscopy, and received several honorary doctoral degrees. He sits on the board of ITWLA and IACOM, CILC, BPN, and serves as a United Nations NGO EO ambassador for the WOLMI in New York. Dr. Ramnath uses his academics of science to interpret the message of the kingdom to influence the economic, political, and social cultures of the world. So I want to welcome each of our speakers. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of this forum. So I'm going to, without further ado, hand it over to our first speaker, who is going to be Pastor John Petit-Frere. And his topic for us today is going to be critical leadership skills for crisis management. Pastor John.
Good morning, everyone. I first of all want to thank our chairman for inviting me and those on the board. Thank you. It is an esteemed privilege to be with you guys this morning. And I was charged with the responsibility of addressing you on critical leadership skills for crisis management. Now, before I go into my subject, I would like to share something. The world, because the world as we know it today is in crisis. Be it health crisis, such as coronavirus, political crisis, social crisis, environmental crisis, spiritual crisis. One may ask, why so many crises? Well, the answer you might not like, actually, because, but suffice it to be said that crises are necessary for development, change, transformation, and even transition. The very institution that we are now on, the very platform we are now on, is a product of crisis that was managed in the way. So if you don't believe me, ask people like David. How did David attain greatness? Wasn't because he was able to face Goliath? That was a crisis then. You talk about Joseph. Pharaoh had a dream nobody could interpret. It was a crisis. It made an opportunity for Joseph to show forth. Daniel, the same issue. The king had a dream and didn't remember or didn't want to express, and asked the people, if you don't tell me what the dream was and interpret it for me, you all are gone. That was a crisis. Daniel showed up. Gideon, the Midianite, were invading and terrorizing people. So you see, and most of those instances and many more, they are a result of crisis. So in reality, you might say, when you really understand the purpose behind crisis, sometimes we may find ourselves saying, thank God for crisis. It may be seen as an opportunity for you to show up or create an opportunity, a platform where your God-given ability can, because the more problem you can solve, the more value you add to society. So you see, you may not like them. You may not like crisis. As a matter of fact, nobody likes them. But your attitude or your response to those crises determine your outcome. You see, needless to say, true leaders are born out of crisis. Now, in my time of sharing with you this morning, I would like to go and show you a couple slides that I had prepared, but the way I'm going to do them this morning is most show them like bullet points, because the time would not allow me to cover a lot of stuff. So I want to show you a few slides in bullet point form that would help you understand where I'm coming from this morning. Now, you see, when we talk about the topic being, leadership, critical leadership skills for crisis management, now we have to first of all define the words. So you see, when you say crisis, what are crises? We say crisis is an emergencies or disruptives or unexpected event that threatens to harm. Things that come. And coming from where I am, from Haiti, you might think crisis is a lifestyle, because we move from one crisis to other crisis. When it's not political crisis, it is natural crisis. So we live of crisis, but in order to understand though, why Haiti gone to so much of what it has gone through, you must understand the mindset, its history, the mindset. So, but that is another story for another time. The other things I depict from my topic is skills. What skills? What are skills? Skills are the ability to do something well. The ability to do something well. Now, okay, you know what? I've just finished. Let me just say, the ability to do something well, a talent or ability that comes from training or practice. Now, having said that, we must clarify the fact that there are two different kinds of skills. We have what we call hard skills. Hard skills really are, for the most part, the teachable abilities you learn from classroom or through books or training materials or on the job, or OJT, what's called on the job training. Hard skills are specific concrete professional abilities such as accounting, or you are computer science, or you are plumbing, you are electrician, or whatever. Those skills, that's what we call hard skills. Now, soft skills are a different kind. Now, soft skills now are non-technical skills that are related to how you work, or you see, it's usually related to your personality, your people skills. So one is almost like what you do. The other one would be viewed as how you do. So these are basically what we call skills, you know. So as how those are related to leadership and crisis. So this morning I have put together a number of points. I call them bullet points, you know. In special situation, you have to act specially. So I would like to really give you those bullet points. What I myself, living in this place or Haiti, you know, where it's constant management of crisis. So I want to share with you those things: self-mastery, emotional intelligence, adaptability, commitment, focus, developing orders, winning mindset, courage, creativity, mental fortitude or toughness, mental toughness, energy, and ultimately dependence on God. Now, having to deal with that, let's go about self-mastery. You know, dealing with self-mastery, it starts knowing yourself, your strengths and weaknesses. Find out what motivates you or demotivates you. The ability to lead yourself and take responsibility for what happened in your life. You see, most of my countrymen, sometimes we live in this, or for some other kind of ethnic group, we live in this mindset of always blaming somebody else for our misfortune, for wherever we are. Indeed, there are some responsibilities in those ways, but if you are aware of what happened, you also have a responsibility to do something about it. And with God's help, we can make a difference. The ability to control your own desire or impulses, self-control, self-discipline, the ability to get yourself to consistently behave and move towards your goal, no matter how hard it is. I would like to say some stuff, you know, there are some more to say, but I'm just gonna suffer it to say. And 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 27, the Apostle Paul wrote and says, you know, it's like an athlete who punishes his body to force themselves to do what they don't necessarily like, but what they need to do. I hope you know the difference between what and need. We found Queen Esther in a very epic situation. She showed restraint, you know, not move emotionally, and she waited for the right time to strike. What a tremendous result she had. Now, you see, next, I want to say mental fortitude. Mental fortitude really is the ability to stand strong in the face of difficulty or unexpected, stressful situation. The ability to function well in the face of doubt, worries, anxiety, unseen circumstances. We saw leaders also in the scripture that cracked down under pressure. Aaron, for example, the people say, well, we don't know what happened with Moses. And guess what? He built a golden calf. Leaders who crack down under pressure. Thirdly, I want to share with is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, what is this really? It's the ability to understand and use and manage your own emotion in a positive way to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and diffuse conflict. We've seen situation also in the Bible, as it is in my reference book. The Amalekite came and attacked Ziklag. They burned the city and they took the wives, the children, and their goods. And when David came, man, they were deflated. You know, the men actually, they cried till they had no strength. Cried till they had no strength. What do? The Bible says David found a way to strengthen himself in the Lord. What do when nothing works? What do when you face a pandemic? You find a way to get strength outside of this world. Now, emotional intelligence. So I want to share those two verses just briefly. It says, you know, that he that is slow to anger is better than a mighty man. So I'm gonna go into something else. That is number 4, focus. What is focus? Focus is the ability to having clear goal, objectives, and dedicated to achieve them. This is focus is make a decision based on it if it will make you most progress. Focus actually is not being sidelined by distraction. Do we have distraction in this life? The many things that we have to face, leaders gonna have to learn to be focused. Adaptability. Adaptability is one of my favorite one here, that I want to share with you. Adaptability. What is adaptability? It's being able to quickly respond to change. Because if there is one constant in life, that is change. We are sure that change is a certain thing. We know it's coming. So being adaptable is a key, for leadership. Now, again, in adaptability, if I were to ask you, are you an oak tree or a palm tree? What's the difference? Maybe most of you would want to be an oak tree because the oak tree is legendary, being strong and sturdy and deeply rooted and whatnot. Whereas a palm tree is, is slender, tall, beautiful, appears to sway by the slightest breeze. But guess what happened? When trial comes, when situation arise, guess what happened? The palm tree is able to navigate, flow, flexible with situation, whereas the oak tree remains strong and sturdy and get uprooted. How flexible can you be? We find Naaman in the Bible. He was about to miss his deliverance or his victory. And, he was so upset because things didn't happen the way he wanted. Like he said, well, I thought the prophet would come and lay his hand on me and, and greet me and whatnot. None of that happened. He was about to miss his miracle. When somebody else told him, Master, what if he had asked something difficult? Would you have done that? Although he was a big army man, but he was able to listen to his subordinates. He was able to adjust. And that caused him to it. Courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, Mandela says, but the triumph over it. We're going to need a lot of courage if we're going to be succeeding as leaders in this time. A winning mindset. We must also know and determine that no matter what, God with us, his ability. Paul says in Philippians 4 verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. We're going to have to demonstrate that. As a matter of fact, the world is looking to us to see whether or not we show that, So, and number 8, energy. We're going to need to do that. We're going to need energy, strength, and vigor is required for sustained physical and mental activity. We cannot be of the faint heart. Number 9, commitment. Being totally engaged. Give and accept no excuse. God says, the scripture says, God will not suffer us to be tempted beyond what we can bear. So we must know if those challenges are coming to us, we have the ability to face them with God's ability within us. Romans 8, it's a matter of just do or die. Number 10, developing orders. True leaders actually knows, and we've learned it from our great leaders in this wonderful organization. You see, and not being able to reproduce yourself really is a good recipe for failure. And I have a book called, The Irrefutable Laws of Succession. Be able to reproduce yourself, because you see, one thing, as I said, is constant in life is change. And that change involves you not being there or always able to do those things. So being able to ensure your succession is what really classifies you as a successful leader. Creativity. We're going to have to learn to be creative when everything we need is not the way we want them. We have to find ways. If we cannot climb it, we're going to go around it. We're going to have to be creative and depend on God to do what we need to do. And finally, we need to learn to depend on God. The Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Total reliance on the wisdom, the counsel, and the strength of God is critical if we are going to succeed. Don't take it for granted. We are going to need that. So, well, my time is up, and I want to thank you, and we look forward to fruitful conversation.
Wow, awesome. Thank you so much, Pastor John. I think those points are really relevant in today's world, especially with what everyone is going through and what we're doing, or what we're experiencing currently I think, the points that you made, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard them before, and the reason why it's so repetitive, even if you haven't heard them on this platform or from our speakers, you've heard them being repeated, throughout a ton of platforms, especially right now. It's because it's the truth. Right? And these are all characteristics that we as leaders and as individuals need, especially in times of crisis. And I like what you said about fear. What you said about courage. Courage is basically being able to overcome your fears. And I think as long as we can have that mindset, have that mentality, we should be able to overcome any negativity or any crisis that we experience as individuals. So thank you, Pastor John. Again, if you want to ask a question, if you have a response, or you would like to get clarification or something, please send your questions to us in the question and answer box. Please don't put your questions in the comment box. Put them in the question and answer box, and we'll get to them during our question and answer period, which will be following all of our speakers once they speak. All right, so next up, we have Ms. Charisa Munroe. She is going to speak to us today on the topic of mental health during crisis times.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all my fellow speakers and those that are joining us this morning. I'm going to try and be brief and strong at the same time, but we're going to be talking about mental health in times of crises. And one of the things that I want to say starting off, and I'll probably say it at the end, there is no health without mental health. World Health Organization made a very good slogan that I thought was very key. And as a social worker, having worked in the medical field for a long time, physical health and mental health are two components that really make up an individual's complete well-being. And both your physical health and your mental health are both challenged and impeded in times of crises. And we learned that in crises can be anything emergent, crisis can be something that you plan for, usually it's something that happens completely out of your control. And it affects your complete mental health. Now, people have been using mental health and mental illness interchangeably. And I want to debunk that very concept because the two are totally different things. So your mental health is your overall well-being. It refers to your effective functioning in all your daily activities. It refers to the foundation of your emotions, feelings, thoughts, behaviors, ability to solve problems. And in the case of crises, it refers to the effective functioning resulting in the ability to adapt to change and cope with adversity. So the speaker before mentioned that adaptability is key. What happens in times of crises from a mental health standpoint is that ability to respond to that change or to adapt to that change is impeded. And sometimes people get stuck. And so, just like your physical health, your physical ability, there are mental health and then there's mental illness. Mental illness is when your emotions, behaviors, feelings, and your ability to adapt is challenged or is affected, and you're unable to think straight. You're unable to behave in a realistic manner. You're unable to control your emotions. And so you have emotions that you wouldn't usually have. You have feelings that you wouldn't usually have. So your mental health is distorted. So now, however, I can have good mental health and have a mental illness, or I can have poor mental health. I can have a mental illness and have good mental health. So I'm trying to get an understanding of, I can have a good mental health today as a general person, and then tomorrow something happens and I experience depression, I experience anxiety. It doesn't mean that my health is poor. It just means that for that moment, I'm having some challenges with my thinking, with my emotions, with my behaviors. So mental illnesses are the health conditions that affect the way we feel and think. In times of crises, it gets worse. In times of crises, it changes. In times of crises, it's affected, which is why we have certain responses in times of crisis. Crisis, especially in a pandemic, a health pandemic where we're at now, some of the bigger symptoms that we are facing as far as mental health is concerned is fear, worry, anger, concern, and overwhelming stress. That's affecting everyone. How everyone manages that is going to depend on the background. Everybody is different. And so my mental health overall, and your mental health overall, and your sister's mental health overall, and your neighbor's mental health overall, depending on that, their background will determine how they respond to the stress, the worry, the fear, and the anxiety, and sometimes the anger that we're feeling because of the pandemic crisis that we're in, or the social unrest that we're in. So everybody is going to adapt differently. Everybody is going to adapt at a different speed. Everybody is going to adjust or not be able to adjust. And so I may be feeling a certain way or not be feeling a certain way from a mental health standpoint. Somebody else may, because number one, I don't have any onset of pre-existing mental health illness already, or I'm able to manage. Whereas someone, they're already dealing with depression, anxiety, before a crisis, they're already dealing with other mental health illness like schizophrenia, bipolar, like mental health, mental illness is a real thing. And mental illness is just the impediment of your overall mental health that's affecting the way you feel, the way you think, the way you respond, and the way you behave. And I keep saying that because I don't want people to automatically think that if you have a mental illness or you have a mental concern or a mental symptom like fear, and it means that you're crazy or means that there's something wrong with you. No, just like how I can have a stomach ache, but physically I'm healthy, just like how I can have a broken leg, just like how I can have a sty in my eye, just like how I can have a toothache. Like those are ailments of my physical body, but my health is fine, but they're okay. Mental health is real, fear is real, stress is real, depression is real, schizophrenic is real, panic attacks is real for people. And so as a social worker, I'm able to see people go through the onset of bad news from their physical health. So you've now just been diagnosed with cancer. Doctor just told you today. Or you've been diagnosed with high blood pressure or diabetes. Doctor told you today. How you deal with that is going to determine your background. It's going to determine the support you have. It's going to determine the information or lack of information. So what we have been seeing in the pandemic now is people are fearful, they are worried, and they are stressful because there is either lack of information, too much information, or they don't know how to manage the information that they're receiving. And so when you don't know something, when there's an unknown, that creates undue stress, that creates extra pressure, that creates anxiety, fear, sometimes depression. And then on top of that, you are adding in this level of social isolation, or you're adding in this level of lack of support. And so when you add that in, your mental health is affected. So how your mental health, the state of your mental health pre-crises can sometimes be a good support on how you go through a crisis. The speaker before me also said something very important. A crisis can be the opportunity to create a better mental health system, number one, for yourself, and number two, for the external sectors. So, and I'm saying this because mental health and your mental illnesses, mental disorders, whether they're short-term or whether they're long-time, is treatable. There's always some support and some system in place to address your mental health, to address the aspects of your mental health. If for some reason, so now we're also facing, and I'm going to go through some statistics in a minute, we're also seeing there's this heightened level of suicide rate in persons, usually the younger generation and sometimes the old generation, for various reasons. There's also a heightened level of substance abuse. So people are turning to more alcohol. People are turning to an increased consumption of tobacco. They're turning to a increased consumption of drug use, because when you are depressed, when you are anxious, when you are stressed, when you are in fear, or when you are in worry, you're looking for something to ease those four things. And they're normally looking for something that's immediate. And so drugs, alcohol, tobacco, they're usually going to provide this instant gratification. And so there's an increased level in those. Well, they lead to now additional physical conditions. All of those, so we're trying, I'm talking we as in the mental health profession, we're trying to address those issues. So normally when you have persons who are feeling some of the major symptoms that we are having, I'm sure we've all felt it, no matter what your background is. There's sadness, there's loneliness, there's a sense of helplessness, there is increase or decreased appetite, there's increased need for sleep or decreased need for sleep. We all deal with these things in time of crisis. How long they last is going to determine the strength and state of your mental health, and if you need to seek help. And I always advocate seeking help, whether it's from your primary care, whether it's from a particular hotline, suicide hotlines, mental health hotlines are available. If you just need someone to talk to, if you need to get yourself out of a rut, what you find is when people have a sense of loss of control, that turns into anger, fear, worry, overwhelming stress. And usually they tend to turn on themselves or they turn on each other. So one of the other things that we are seeing is this increased level of domestic violence. And it's even worsening because you have social isolation or social distancing, so everyone is stuck at home. So you have an increased level of domestic violence, and then you also have an increased level of abuse, and everybody is stuck in the home. So what would have been a respite for children at school, what would have been a respite for husbands and wives at work, that's lost. And so all of these different triggers are affecting everyone's mental health and producing mental illnesses for persons who either never had a mental illness or it's just exacerbating mental illness that was there already. However, getting to a level of strong mental health is going to determine how the treatment you receive, how quickly you catch on to the fact that there's something wrong. Because if you're sick, you're going to go to the doctor. If you're not feeling well, you're going to take a Tylenol. If you have a headache, you're going to take a painkiller. If there's something really going on with your pain, or your pain in your lower right quadrant, you're going to go to the doctor and find out there's an appendicitis. So if there's something going on with your emotions, the way you're thinking and the way you're feeling, you should also seek some kind of help or support. And I'm going to end with just addressing the mental health from a general aspect and how we can all get involved, because there are answers to the mental health crises. And if we think that there's mental health issues because of the pandemic and the crisis that we have, if it's not addressed and managed now, there's actually going to be a mental health crisis that we're going to deal with from a global aspect. Globally, there's been an increase in suicide across the world. Globally, there's been an increase in depression and anxiety across the world. And so it's going to take more than just a mental health sector to address the issue. There's going to need to be reorganizations that build an actual mental health system from now. There's going to have to be a conversion of just dealing with mental health issues or mental illness short-term to actually long-term management. There's going to have to be an active labor programs where people are assisting persons with finding a new trade, with getting back into the workforce because we've had loss of employment, with how to deal with homeschooling because now children are not in school. So there need to be programs in place in the community that can help people to deal with these different aspects that are affecting their mental health because they're stressed and because they're overwhelmed. And this is where I and you and everyone on this call listening, this is where we come in. We come in, how can we lend our gift? how can we lend our organization to help with the overall arching mental health illness so that we can increase the state of our mental health and individuals to a very good one. Thank you.
Thank you, Charisa. I think the mental health topic and discussion is really something that is important and that needs to happen more often. That's part of the reason why we wanted to include that on this call. So again, if you have a question, if you need clarification on some things from any of our speakers, please submit them in the Q&A box. It should be at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those questions during our question and answer period. Again, the topics that we're discussing today, we're getting a bit more in the nitty-gritty when it comes to crisis, dealing with mental health and mental illnesses, and then we're about to get with the physical health and physical illnesses, and how we can cope with those. So I think it's a good time to bring our next speaker up, Dr. Pepe Ramnath, and his topic for today is going to be health recommendations for COVID-19 and other health issues. Dr. Pepe.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, Myles Munroe Jr., and great hearing from my good friend, Jean Petit-Frere out of Haiti, and of course, the beautiful Charisa. I think this particular time that concerns on mental issues are totally relevant. We are facing major issues right now, and we need to hear what the Lord is saying and what his prescriptions are. My assignment here today is to give you some health recommendations for the COVID-19 and maybe some other health issues that will evolve from what we are presently going through at this particular time. The great Greek doctor Hippocrates, he said, our food should be our medicine and our medicine should be our food. We live in an incredible machine. We live inside of an incredible machine that is called the human body. This is recorded by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 19. He says, do you not know that your bodies are the temple or the housing where God chose to dwell? And it went on further on to say that you were bought with a price. About 30 years ago at the University of Miami, there was an experiment that was done on the elements or the elemental composition of the human body. And 30 years ago, it was valued at about $1.5 million. That is looking at the copper, the gold, the nickel, magnesium, calcium, including things like cyanide too as well, inside of your body. And 30 years ago, it was valued at $1.5 million. Now, 30 years after, when you fast forward, I think it's probably about $10 million. So we are actually walking multi-millionaires without any clothes, but just keep your clothes on, all right? But you're rich. I am a research scientist and not a medical doctor, but I follow the medical writings of this ancient script that is called the Bible. I had some training at the CDC and the medical mycological departments of several universities, and I pride myself in some of the classes that I took at the CDC, the Center for Disease out in Atlanta. I personally believe, like my father in the faith, Dr. Munroe, he always believed that the Bible was never a religious book, but a book that is totally relevant to our present global pandemic, the racial injustices that we are facing even right now. And, our weather is just going crazy. We are seeing so many hurricanes that are forming right now. One just headed up in Portugal. What are hurricanes doing up in Portugal? Our planet has changed considerably. We thank God in a sense for the pandemic because it caused a little bit of less pollution from the humans. So there's a lot of adjustments that are actually taking place. This Bible is a book that I happen to believe that is totally misunderstood by the world that we actually live in. And you and I, we cannot be effective kings or professionals in the marketplace until we first learn to be faithful priests in the house of God, because this is where God equips us, where he trains us. Believe it or not, it was the first university that was established in ancient days. To see medicine in plants demands a scientist or a doctor to walk really in the spirit. The great Solomon said in Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 2, he said, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the glory of kings to search out that matter. And kings really are really professional. These are doctors, engineers, and psychologists, whatever you might have out there. So our duty is now to seek out what God has actually hidden. The reason why we have to seek it out is that when you find it, it actually becomes yours. So I have concluded from this particular scripture that the true effectiveness or the success of a health specialist is really determined by his or her participation in the house of God. This is where God brings the answers to our global pandemic and to whatever we might be facing on the world. So the original intentions of the house of God was and is to assemble people together for the highest form of learning in the land. It is there, it is where we gather and we train people to actually infiltrate and to influence the marketplace with the idea that Jesus of Nazareth has bought into our systems. You know, many centuries ago, the priests actually were the one that gave agricultural, mycological, medical advice to family to remove diseases and conflict within the structure that was there. That has actually disappeared, but we are trying to bring it back through this organization, the ITWLA and the IAKCM. We see in the ancient days that if a house was infected with mold, because you know, mold fungus really compromises your immune system. You don't want to be living in a house infested with mold right now and facing this virus, the coronavirus itself, because the mold is going to compromise your health and make you become a victim of the coronavirus. So the true and the final answers to today's crisis has always been trusted, you know, at the house of God. In one of the old scriptures, Leviticus chapter 14 and verse 33, we are seeing the instruction that a priest is giving to people or citizens concerning mold infestation and fungus in their home. This is incredible. So it says here in verse 35, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like defiling mold or fungus in my house. And the priest, verse 36 says, the priest is the order, the house to be emptied. He would order the house to be emptied before he goes to examine it. He's a smart priest, because you don't want to go in a house that's infested with mold and then come out because you yourself are going to actually be sick. So he would examine the mold so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest will go in and inspect the house. And he's to examine the mold, the fungus on the walls, and if it is greenish in color, which what we will call cladosporiums, or what we will call penicillium or aspergillus, or reddish in depression, that is some species that are very, very bad for you, that appears in the deepest corners or the surfaces of the wall, the priest shall go out to the doorway of the house and close it up for 7 days, because 7 is really the number that most medical mycologists or people that are in the laboratory will wait for a period of 7 days, because that's where environmental bacteria, fungus, viruses actually mature. So you wait for that 7 days. The idea of 7 days development started a couple of thousand of years ago in the scriptures. And verse 39 says, on the 7th day, the priest shall return to inspect the house. If the mold has spread on the walls, he is to order that contaminated stone to be torn down and to be called unclean outside of the house and outside of the town. You actually dispose of it, you know, or take it into a place where that is far from the people themselves. Verse 41 says, and he must have all of the inside walls of the house scraped, and the material that is scraped off dumped in an unclean place outside of the town. So we are seeing fungal remediation started way back in Leviticus 4, 5, 6,000 years ago. Now at ITWLA, we are priests who speaks the language of the Pharaoh. Now we are fully aware that spiritual words are like foolishness to the systems of the world, because it's a kind of different language. But when we learn to speak the language of the Pharaoh, it becomes yeast, wheat, and tears, pearls, and mustard seed to them. And so they're waiting for us to interpret these spiritual things into tangible, relevant words that we need today. If we don't do that, they're going to believe that our scriptures and our Bible is totally archaic, it is irrelevant, and it is primitive and outdated. Now, in 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 14, the Bible tells us the natural man does not accept the things that come from the Spirit of God, but yet he needs it. So the natural people out there, they're looking for answers. They're looking for what the church has to say. They're not looking for us to only pray for them. They're looking for us to tell them what to do to remediate this problem. This is why Charisa came on telling us a lot about mental illness, mental challenges, and how we can actually remediate this problem. And then we go back to John Petit, who talks about leadership and crisis and dealing with it. it in this particular time that we live in. So the scriptures actually say, for they are foolishness to him, and he cannot understand them because they are actually spiritually discerned. So we must discern it and interpret it for them. So there are many things that we could talk about. I'm going to have to skip some studies to just get to some points that what we are dealing with today. Studies show that people that lives in a nation and that practices honor, they have a tendency to live a little bit longer. You know, there is a tip of what we call the chromosome. It is called the telomeres, and the telomeres is actually affected by honor. When people have a tendency to honor, it releases chemical to the telomeres, causes the telomere to grow longer. When it grows longer, it causes you to live longer and have a higher quality of life. Now, we know about this in the Proverbs, that when you honor your father and your mother, you live longer on the earth. And worship and meditation and all those things are also new scientific discoveries that shows that the telomeres actually increase. So in these times where people are dying from COVID, all you have to do is to meditate and honor some people around you, and you're going to see some changes. You know, so the Exodus chapter 20 and verse 12 talks about honoring your father and your mother. Now, if you rest properly also on the seventh day, you release a P53 gene that will also repair dying cells. So all those things are very significant in what we are dealing right now. So nature actually surrounds us with answers to our present viral pandemic. We have answers for what's going on, and it surrounds us. Job chapter 12 and verse 7, when all of his family and friends rejected him, Job began to talk with the cow, the plants, everything that surrounded him, and they began to give him answers. So he says, ask the animals and they will teach you, and the birds in the skies, and they will tell you, and speak to the earth and the fish in the sea, and they will teach you. And so the answers are in the plants all around us. You know, God says, I've given you the plant for answers. You know, I've given you plants for medicine. And Hippocrates actually said that we should use food for medicine. You know, the waterfalls are actually mourning and they're groaning. The oceans are groaning, and the forests are calling us, and they're telling us how to protect ourselves in this virus right now. It is saying, come and learn from me. I will teach you. The world is looking for antibodies right now. You know, in fact, they're telling people that have survived the virus, if you can donate your blood, the plasma, we can help so many other people to overcome it, because in the plasma, it's loaded now with antibodies. However, we are dealing with a virus that is changing, mutating probably every week. Right now, this particular virus has now mutated over 1,000 times. So the antibodies that worked yesterday may not necessarily work today. Well, what do we do in this particular case? What does the Bible say? What does this old, what they call primitive, outdated books have to say? It says that the ocean and the forests and waterfalls teaches us virology in dealing with the coronavirus. Why? Because they all produce millions and billions of negative ions. The ions that is produced by the ocean. Hey, if you live in the Bahamas, I would encourage the government, let the people go to the seaside, because when the waves collapse, they clap their hands together, they produce negative ions. And what does negative ion do? These negative ion has the ability to accelerate the production of antibodies in the lymphocyte, which is the white blood cells. And the white blood cells are divided into the B and the T cells, and it is the B cells that produce antibodies. So imagine going out to the beach, provokes antibodies in your white blood lymphocytes in your bodies and produce the antibodies that will fight off this virus that you're dealing with. God has placed the answers in our environment, right in that ocean, right there in the Bahamas, so Trinidad, Tobago, wherever you might be living near the seas. If you don't have seas near you, go up to the mountains, get a waterfall, go out there somewhere, and you will actually, nature itself will actually give you the antibodies that you actually need. So it seems like God has given us free vitamins from the air. His pharmacies, actually, God's pharmacy is really in the lightning strikes, in the hurricanes, in the storms, in the beaches, in the waterfalls. Niagara Falls is loaded. If you spend a lot of time in front of your computers, your television, it produces a lot of positive ions. And positive ions does the opposite of what negative ions does. It depletes your antibodies and so forth. So ocean waves generate negative ions. It also causes and gives your body the ability to absorb more oxygen into your system. So there are so many other things that you could actually do to help yourself. Blood quarantine zinc
all these things were prescribed in the scriptures. Zinc is actually formed when you roast the lamb, not when you curry it or when you stew it. If you roast the lamb, that means you barbecue the lamb. It has a tendency to release a lot of zinc to actually fight the plague. And we don't have enough time to go into a lot of these things here, but maybe in some of the questions that you may have, we will try to answer them. But viruses are very small. It is so small, it is thousands of times, maybe possibly millions of times smaller than your human cells. So it goes in very easy into the cells. But if you use different types of equipment, you can actually destroy those viruses before it could get into your system. If you use the ultraviolet light, for example, ultraviolet light actually sends out radiation to an extent that it kills viruses in a matter of milliseconds based on how close the virus is to that light itself. The immune system, God has given us the immune system. Don't ever lose contact with the immune system. You need to strengthen your immune system because your immune system is going to fight for you in this particular time. Exodus chapter 12 and verse 8 talks a lot about the bitter herbs that has all of these minerals that you actually need, and the zincs and so forth. Leviticus chapter 13 and verse 45 tells you about covering your mustache with really the mask. When you cover your mustache with a mask, you prevent yourself from actually being contaminated. If you use a plant from a simple plant that is called a Cinchona officinalis, you can extract quinine from in there. And I know out in the Caribbean islands, here in America too as well, the Canadian dry, the tonic waters have quinine in it. You could use it really as a preventative action by sipping on some of those things. So we are out of time, but thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. There is a ton load of information out there by the CDC, the WHO, the FDA, and also especially in your local church, where there are a lot of medical doctors and scientists who are now pastors, the priest and the king model that causes domination of the kingdom here on this earth. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Pepe. I appreciate you sharing your expertise. I'm always fascinated by what Dr. Pepe has to say because he speaks from a scientific background. So a lot of what he says is backed by scientific facts. So he recommends a lot of products. So he recommends a lot of things we can do naturally, to prevent illnesses or to better ourselves when it comes to our physical health. So again, if you have questions, please submit them. I know that the sessions each session wasn't long enough. It's never long enough, right? But I think we wanted just to create the conversation and whet your appetite so that we can have a much greater conversation during our question and answer period. And that's where we're arriving now. So we're going to open the floor for our question and answer period. I want to give as much time to this as we can. I'm going to bring all of our speakers up, everyone that shared today. Again, we have Pastor John Petit-Frere, we have Ms. Charisa Munroe, we have Pastor Pepe Ramnath. Again, this is the time where you get to interact, so to speak, with the speakers. You can submit your questions and we'll do our best to get them answered for you. So we have quite a bit of questions that came in. So we're just going to get to them really quickly. So Pastor John, a lot of persons really liked your presentation, liked the points that you shared. Some folks missed the points that you shared. So can you go through those 12 points real quickly once again? And then can you elaborate one more time on your points of focus and courage?
All right. Well, what I'll do, I have a slide here that I'm just going to put them up. I have one slide where I wrote them out, not with no definition whatsoever, but I have the list in one of my slides. So I'm just going to put it up for you right now and suffice it to, at least I think I will name those. At least also remember, this is not an exhaustive list of what is just a few, that I find personally in the environment in which I live that was somewhat necessary. So I am going to go into it right now. Critical, self-mastery, because I was so pleased and so blessed by Charisa's presentation. I think almost like, most of what was said here, we talk about self-mastery, emotional intelligence, adaptability, which for me was actually a key in there, a commitment. You see, commitment is critical because when we think we have option not to stick to it, we will choose an easy way. So commitment is the key one. Focus, developing others, because we cannot do it alone. And and we have to leverage on resources that God put around us. So that's when when you need information like that about scientific aspect of things, return to Pepe. So when we want about the mental issues, things that we sometimes question ourselves, we turn to Charisa. So I'm saying, we need to leverage, and I think that's what this forum provides, a winning mindset, a willingness to actually to know that I can and will, because our faith in God should give us, I would say, that kind of advantage over the others. I wonder how the world live in those times. I wonder when you don't have God to rely on. I wonder how to survive, how to make it. Courage, creativity, mental fortitude, that is mental toughness, the ability to face challenges, and don't accept no from life as an answer. With the energy, and ultimately, one of the most important things is your dependence on God. This is basically the list. And every single one of them, I have plenty of scripture for them and can be developed in length, but time would not allow that. I just put that out.
All right, thanks a lot, Pastor John. So there's a list for you guys, so you can take notes as you view the list. So we're going to bring it back to all of our speakers once again and get to our next question. So here's a good question. Sorry, I didn't mention the names of the person that asked about the list prior to. I was trying to keep in mind that I want to acknowledge the persons who are submitting the question. So Anthony Osagi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. His question is, crises aren't pleasant, but provide an opportunity for growth. Could changing our perspective to welcome crisis then be a good way to approach it? Or is expecting the worst to happen in our personal lives unhealthy paranoia? So any of our speakers could take a stab at that.
So I'm going to talk about that really quick because ultimately, there's no health without mental health. Everything we do, everything we say, all of our responses, our attitude, our behaviors start with what goes on in our minds and the state of our mental health. And so if we're always negative, if we are, forget always, but if we're negative, if we're feeling a sense of hopelessness, low self-esteem, if we're lost, if we're grieving, sometimes it's very difficult to think beyond the way you're feeling right now. And so a short-term state of sadness, a short-term state of stress, fear, anxiety, those things are actually, I'm going to use the word good and okay, short-term. Getting stuck there is not. And so if you want to, I tell people, feel all your feelings, feel everything you're going to feel sad, feel hurt, feel pain. Like those things make you stronger once you get through them. They let you know that you're living once you get through them. They let you know that you're in a real world with real problems, because mental health is not the absence of all of those things I mentioned, those symptoms. It's not even the absence of illness. Mental health is being able to manage in the midst of crises, in the midst of problems and issues that we cannot control. So remembering that and thinking that and being able to adapt your way of thinking, in this instance, being able to adapt your perspective from one day to the next, from one crisis to the next. Like we had a crisis in 2008, 2009, that took on a certain level of perspective. And then since then, we've had a certain way of thinking, and now here we are in a more global pandemic crisis, and we're now having to think differently than we did 12 years ago. And so, yes, you are correct. Changing your perspective and being able to adapt and adjust to the changes that is going on around you that you can't control, but also being able to adapt and change of yourself, the way you think, the way you were thinking tomorrow, you can't think today, the way you were looking at life and your children and your marriage and your finances and the way school is operating now, the way you were thinking and perceiving that back in March, in October, takes a whole different level of thinking, takes a whole different level of understanding. And so when the Bible says in Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom, though it cost you all you have, get understanding, because it'll be a detriment if you are applying something you don't understand or something you're misunderstanding. So it's very good to get all the information. Like now we are in a place of educating ourselves. So I'm blessed and just privileged to have Dr. Pepe, who can now tell us from a health standpoint, you know, how to look at COVID and how to look at how we should be living mentally, health physically, so I can apply that, so I can learn, okay, I can't do what I was doing before because this is going on. And so we have to get to a place where we can change and we can get new information so that we can get greater understanding. So when we apply what we need to apply October, November, December into 2021, which we can't do the same we were doing in 2020, it makes for an easy transition. Is that change easy? Is that adaptability and adjustment easy? No, it's not. I'm not going to say that being able to think one way today and a different way tomorrow is easy, but at least acknowledge the fact that you need to and then start that process.
Awesome. I think that's such a great answer, you know, because I do believe that our perception or how we perceive things allows us to dictate what essentially happens. So, you know, whatever we call something, it becomes, right? So that's why the name is so important. You know, whatever you call something, it becomes. So in dealing with crisis situations, you know, if you call it a crisis, it'll become a crisis. If you call it an opportunity, you'll find the opportunities within that experience. So I think that mindset of having the right perspective, it leans on, you know, what you call something. So I think that's very important. And even with dealing with mental health issues, you know, someone asked a good question. I think this is a good time to bring this up as well. So they asked, why do people think that when you seek help with your mental health or speaking to someone about mental health issues, it means that we're crazy? You know, how do we get past that belief or that stigma that is on this perception of mental health issues? Why is it that people find it such a, because like you said, like if you have a stomach ache, you go to the doctor. I think it should be the same. If you have emotional issues, you should seek help dealing with those emotions. So why is there a stigma, or how can we get past the stigma of thinking that dealing or having mental health issues or speaking to someone about mental health issues makes us crazy?
I'm going to start with ignorance. So when there's a lack of information and a lack of correct information, the understanding of it is left up to anybody, whatever they perceive, whatever they want to think about it. And so for a long time, just like your physical, and Pastor Pepe can back me up here, just like a lot of the physical ailments and disorders that have, like for years and years and years, people thought that AIDS was literally a death sentence. They thought that it was like leprosy. If someone was known to have HIV or AIDS, don't touch me, don't speak to me, I don't want to get close to you. Or they themselves thought, I'm going to die tomorrow. They didn't want to get treatment because, you know, there's this thing of, because the world is thinking so negatively about it, it's a taboo. Mental health is and was the same thing. If you have any type of mental illness diagnosis, people are thinking you're crazy. And that's across the board. That's everywhere. So people are scared now to even walk into an establishment that's known to provide those services, because if someone sees me, they're going to automatically think I'm crazy, there's something wrong with me, I'm going to kill myself, I'm going to kill someone else. All of that, however, is because of a lack of information, a lack of true knowledge, a lack of awareness. Now, not only a lack of information on the population the external population side, but there's also a lack of information on sometimes the scientists, or lack of information on the specialist side, because for a long time, these things were still, there was still research being done. And so if research is being done, you can't necessarily give out information. So as things evolve, people are now realizing that, okay, AIDS is not a death sentence. Okay, kidney disease is not a death sentence. It can not only be transmitted by touch. I can talk to you and you won't get it. I can walk around with HIV, AIDS, and still live a relatively normal life. People didn't know that. As information and research has evolved, people are now realizing that there's medication. What was being the stigma attached to it before was not true, and this is a scientific proof. We can prove that. Here it is. And so once people start to get more information, they get more understanding. When they get more understanding, then you decrease their level of fear. You decrease their level of worry, which is why my number one objective here was to just bring literally awareness to mental health and the fact that it's real. So I could debunk that very perspective of, if I have any type of mental illness, or if I exhibit a certain level of mental health symptoms, I'm not crazy. Prime example, if that was the case, then my brother and I would be considered crazy for the last 5 years, because we've been in a state of grief. With grief comes a certain level of depression, comes a certain level of stress, comes a certain level of anxiety, comes a certain level of sadness, comes a certain level of hopelessness. Like, you have these symptoms of grief from time to time. Because of our backgrounds, we've been able to manage that, but we've gone through that. If I walked into a wellness center because I needed to talk to someone for 5 weeks in those 5 years, it doesn't mean that I'm crazy. It just means that I recognize that I need help. I need to talk to someone so I don't go crazy, so I don't get to a place of insanity, so I don't allow the depression to get worse. And so as we begin, as more of people like myself start to educate you and start to give you more information, and so that you can understand that, this is real and it's okay for me to get help, because help just means that I'm human. It also means that I understand I need it, and getting help early is going to prevent you from getting worse. So when I hear people who say that, then you're crazy or something is wrong with you, I automatically know it's because they just don't know. They don't have the information. And so at that time, that's my opportunity, or your opportunity, to educate them in love, of course.
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, it's just being human, right? We all go through these different emotions of depression, anxiety. These are natural emotions that we deal with. Sometimes we need help managing them. Just like we need help managing our finances, we need help managing our physical health. We also need help managing our mental health. So it's just a part of us being human.
If I could,
sure.
I am in total agreement with Charisa. Listen, we are a triune being. Whether we are spiritual or not, we are a triunity. We are a spirit that lives in a body and possesses a soul. And that soul part of us is the emotional, intellectual part of our being. And that can be affected, just like our physical body is affected by what we put into it. Our soulical being, our emotion, our mental abilities can be affected based on what we put into it. There is some new research right now that is out. Well, actually, it's not really new. It's been out for quite some time. There's a gentleman by the name of Linus Pauling. He won the Nobel Prize for actually reversing diseases using vitamins. And Dr. Abraham Hoffer was a student of his, and Dr. Abraham Hoffer deals with mental issues. He found out that when people are under intense stress, when their body is under intense stress, the first place that really is affected when you're under intense stress, especially in the time that we go through, that we are going through right now, is your gut. Your gut begin to now deplete good bacteria and increase the bad ones. And then you have electrical issues when that happens. Electricity between the gut and the brain begins to malfunction and so forth. Now, during the time that he lived, Abraham Hoffer, there was a plague that was going on, and he began to treat that plague with vitamin B3, which is niacin. Vitamin B3 actually is depleted, especially when you're under stress. What is also depleted a lot when you're under stress is magnesium. And people that are dealing with mental issues, when they do blood tests on a lot of these people, they find very, very extreme, deadly low levels of magnesium in them. And also their B3, their niacin, is almost totally absent. Now, B3 is necessary because when your body is under stress, your physical body, it produces adrenaline. And when adrenaline goes to your body, it's good, but when it goes to your brain, you can have some problems. When it goes to the brain, it reacts with oxygen. Adrenaline reacts with oxygen in your brain to produce something called adrenochrome. Adrenochrome is almost the exact formula and effects, has the same effects as LSD. Now, I have never taken LSD. I don't know if anybody else here, if anyone has been through that experience, but what I understand is that it causes you to hallucinate. It causes you to see things that is not there, and it causes you to hear things that are not there. So now, because this is dealing now with the mental part of you, it affects you mentally. Imagine by losing something physiologically in your physical body, it affects your mental ability. And what he noticed though is when he was treating the people for this particular plague, and I'm so sorry, I can't remember the plague right now. There were people that had mental issues, schizophrenia, major mental issues. He noticed that they were being cured from the plague, but at the same time, they were no longer having the mental issues. They were no longer hallucinating and so forth. So there were people who had schizophrenia that also contracted the plague, the virus and the disease back in that time. And when he was treating them with vitamin B as in boy 3, with niacin, the plague left them, but it was something that caused a darkness skin, like almost like a mange, almost like a hardening of the skin. But he noticed that was leaving, and at the same time, the schizophrenic person was actually becoming back normal and being reacclimated back into society. And he found out that the reason why is because their levels of B3, vitamin B3 niacin, was absent from their system that was creating the reaction between the adrenaline and the oxygen to produce the adrenochrome, and the vitamin B3, the niacin, was actually decreasing it. So when it decreased it, they were no longer now seeing things or hearing words. So in the time that we live in right now, there's so much fear. I know that people's B3 is going down. People's niacins and magnesium is very low. And I would encourage people, you know, I take the magnesium, I take the B3 too as well. I tell you one of the jokes that me and Angela have. The first time I took B3, I never knew that it causes you to be flustered. That means you feel overheated. So I was driving the car, I took the vitamin B3, I took about 100 milligrams, which is really a low amount of vitamin B3, the niacin. And suddenly I started to sweat. So I started to take off my shirt, and I'm telling Angela, say, hey, I am overheated here. I don't know what's going on with me. And she started laughing and so forth. Then we found out it was the B3 that does that. Now, the first set of time, the first, second, and third or fourth time or so, you would feel those kind of effects. Eventually, it actually disappears. So knowing that that's a side effect, you know, is not a bad thing, because if you sweat, of course, you're going to also release a lot of heavy metals and toxins from your body too at the same time. So I would encourage people to look into the study with Dr. Abraham Hoffer. He's a sound believer in the Lord too as well. He worked with Linus Pauling, the Nobel Prize. And you know, Mr. Chairman, I don't understand. They will give people Nobel Prize for curing a disease or helping somebody to come out of a disease, but they would never recognize their work. In fact, they would use a medication instead of the Nobel Prize theory that they have actually gotten. Both me and Angela, we just came back we were out in Texas, we were out in Mexico. We were something that produced negative ion. We loaded up with vitamin D, because even though you live in the Bahamas there, Mr. Chairman and Pastor Sheena, so A lot of us, we are indoors and we don't get enough sunlight, so we don't produce enough vitamin Ds. And when we don't produce enough vitamin Ds, we are unable to absorb the vitamins that come from our food. So we have deficiency in that. So you can either go out to the sun or just take a supplement and just beef it up. So before we get on that plane, we increase our vitamin D3, which is sunlight with K, to almost 10,000 IUs. We took about 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C's, 100 milligrams of zinc, and then we took magnesium, about 125 milligrams of magnesium. We went in that plane. We went everywhere. Mexico, people were sneezing, whatever it is. We have our negative ionizer. We are loaded now with vitamins. And we came back home and we are doing very, very well. And tell you what though, I feel this was my revelation from God to just start getting back in the field. Telling people about the kingdom of God. And of course, God works miraculous. There are many people that was actually healed in those services. Thank God that we took, the courage to go out, knowing the knowledge that the Lord has given us, because the difference between fear and faith is really knowledge and information. I am sitting in that plane, and it might sound funny. I know I'm loaded with vitamins. This virus is going to be scared of me. So I'm loaded with all this, and I have my ionizers. People even ask, what do you have there? It's this little pendant in my chest. I said, this is an ionizer. What does it do? It destroys viruses. When it comes in contact with viruses, negative ion will snap it immediately. The closer the virus is to the ions, it actually dies. So I am in total agreement. In the time that we live in, this pandemic and so forth, we need information that would put our minds at ease so that we are not under these mental strain. And talk to somebody. If you are going through some stuff, talk to someone. The same time that you guys were going through the loss of your mom and dad, I lost 17 people, 17 very close people within that same year, which included your mom and your dad. My eldest brother, my sister, my aunt, my uncles, they all they passed within that 1 year. So I had to do stuff to keep myself afloat. Don't think that I didn't go through stuff. I went through a lot of mental strain. I was talking to Pastor Sheena, Pastor Dave. I was talking to everybody because I just needed somebody to talk with. And that helped a whole lot. Plus, I had a lot of black chocolates. I had a lot of vitamins that I put in. Magnesium was a major, major hit in my life, because the more I replaced the magnesium, the more I stayed above the mental challenges that I had through. So even though we are anointed, we are living in bodies that possess a soul that needs that fellowship with one another and needs the necessary foods that will keep it afloat. Thank you.
Okay, well, speaking on necessary foods, and I do want to get to as many questions as we can get to. So really quickly, Pastor Pepe, Anthony Osagi, he wants you to just give your recommendations on herbs or foods that help with developing the immune system, number one. And then there's a question about fasting. Does fasting help our body repair itself as well?
Yes. Well, fasting is really another word for diet. Fasting is not always totally staying away from food. That's one form of fast. Daniel did almost 6 different diets. He had a 3-day, he had a 6-day, he had a 9-day with just green stuff. That means anything that was colored green. In other words, he didn't have carrots, which was red, or orange, which was orange, or yellow. He used everything that was green. Then he had 21 days where he stayed away from certain type of food and so forth. And those things really help his immune system. Also, billing that 21 days Daniel fast would also strengthen, give him muscles in the brain, in the way that you think mentally. I would highly recommend, of course, if you're in the islands, you're in Africa and so forth, in the United States, of course, you could go get organic foods around this time, especially. You don't want to get stuff that are non-organic, because then you have to deal with heavy metals and toxins and so forth. So both myself and Angela, we have been trying very, very hard to stay away from meat. Now, it was hard to go to Mexico and don't have some of their Mexican food. So we came back and we are detoxing right now. But you want to stay away, especially around this time, as much as you can from meats. If you do have to eat meats, you want to do the grass-fed beef, because there's a lot of benefits in there with the ions, with the magnesium. There's a whole lot of stuff in there. I do ginger teas. I do green teas every day. Angela, she juices celery every morning. Every morning our routine is to get up and drink a cup of, I think you can see the cup here. Well, it goes in and out, all right? We have an entire cup, 16 ounces of an entire cup of water, mixed with 1 whole lemon. That's the yellow. I prefer the yellow over the green because the yellow has more sodium hydroxide, which is more alkalining. And it has citric acid, but it also have NaOH, which is more alkalining, so it alkalizes your body. Remember, viruses cannot live in alkalinity. It only lives in acidity. There are more foods like even watermelon. If you love watermelons, watermelon has a pH of 10.4, 10.5, which is more alkaline. You use alkaline water, tonic water, foods with heavy seasonings, you know, cilantro, culantro, you know, those green seasoning and so forth that you would have, you know, that you could put into your meats if you do have to eat meat. If you're eating chicken and so forth, stay away from, you know, anything that is not organic. You know, eat foods like that. I would say that you will supplement yourself other than the foods that you eat, staying away from the meat and so forth. I would say you supplement yourself every morning with D3. D3 needs, and you must have K, K as in K. So if you're using vitamin D, take about a 5,000 IU international units on a daily basis, or with the K3 and K2, sorry, K2, D3 with K2. You know, you can get it sold anyway. I think I have a thing here. You know, this product here. Can you see that? Am I standing in front of it? I think I'm standing.
Yeah, you're in front of it.
Yeah. So like this one, you know, I'm not an advocate of now, but that's one that you can get. If you get a 1,000 IU, you could take 5 of them. All right. That's especially when you're traveling. But on a daily basis, when you're home, you want to take a 1,000 IU of it when you're home. You're not traveling anyway. If you're traveling out or you're going out to meet friends or so forth, socializing to some extent, you want 5,000 IUs. If you end up getting the COVIDs or any type of infection, so you want to get 15,000 IUs for at least 5 days. And then you would take 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C's if you're infected 4 times a day. That adds up to around 16,000 milligrams of vitamin C's. Then you definitely need zinc, 100 milligrams of zinc in the morning and 100 in the afternoon if you have COVID. If not, just take 25 milligrams, just routinely, prophylactically, you know, as a precautionary, 25 milligrams of zinc. Zinc is very important because zinc gets inside of the cells, and when it gets inside of the cells, it actually shuts down the duplicating machine, which we call the reverse transcriptase. It makes copies of the virus. If you got zinc inside of there, it shuts it down. When it shuts it down, then you eliminate the reproduction also the replication of zinc itself. Take magnesium, because when you have high levels, take 125 milligrams of magnesium daily, because when you have high levels of vitamin D's, the vitamin D's depletes the magnesium, and you need magnesium for sleep. People who have the muscles against hard, and so that's an indication that your magnesium is low. If you have insomnia, also problem in sleeping, that's also very low. Otherwise, I could just pray for you. For some reason, whenever I pray for people who have sleeping disorder, they get healed and they sleep immediately. So be healed in Jesus' name. May your sleep be returned back unto you in Jesus' name. Amen. And that's all you got to say, because a king don't talk too long. A king just decree and declare the word, and the word is done. So again, vitamin D with K, vitamin C's, vitamin zinc, and magnesium. Those 4 are very, very important in getting your body, set, to be around people that may have the virus and so forth. And if you are around people, Mr. Chairman, if you are around people that has the virus and you have these vitamins inside of you, you may feel effects of it, but it doesn't overtake you. Some of the effects you will literally feel is sometimes you would feel a slight fever rise and then it goes back down, or you may get intense headaches at times too as well. But the vitamins in there are going to rush towards it and begin to fight it and destroy it. You may even feel sometimes senses of a little bone ache or ache in your body and so forth. But the vitamins, if you have those high levels, it's going to fight it off. And then if you feel those effects too, I would advise that you increase your vitamins C again. Vitamin C is really like one of the major vitamins that fights off the COVID virus. And again,
Please check with your local doctors. I gave you some information, but please check with your local doctor to make sure that these are good for you, because everybody's body is different. And you can get further information from the FDA, WHO, and which one again it have out the chart? It has
CDC.
CDC. I missed the CDC. All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pepe. So moving right along to the next question, I want to get to a lot of these as much as I can. Pastor John, so this is a question I'll direct towards you. What is the importance of being submitted to the pastor or the leader to become effective in times of crisis? The importance of being submitted to the pastor or leader to become effective in times of crisis.
Well, it is critical because you see, there's a covering that comes. For example, Dr. Pepe just mentioned a while ago in his presentation, he was saying, you know, honor, the principle of honor. The principle of honor is a critical one because it says longevity, success in life is related to not just doing exercise. You see, with all those vitamins that Pepe just referred to, all of those, as necessary as they are, but the scripture remains that says, if you honor your mother, or should I put it, you should honor your life sources. When I say life sources, I'm referring to people through whom you get life, your spiritual father, your biological mother or father. He didn't say honor good parents and neglect the others. He says honor them. So the principle here is that you bring covering. So it's almost as if like when you have an umbrella over you. An umbrella is not to dominate your life. Actually, an umbrella serves to protect you from what could actually otherwise affect you. Let's say it's raining. If you have the umbrella, you have that covering, you are able to be, you know, it prevents you from being affected by what goes around. And there is a lot of things going on affecting people and inflicting people with all kinds of illnesses or diseases and whatnot. So in time of crisis, I think it's a covering that one don't want to go without. You see, I find, for example, you see, one of the guy if you look at 2 Samuel chapter 15, you'll find a story where David was being ousted by his own child, Absalom. You know, even in the midst of that, you should see how this thing outplayed. He removed himself from under that covering, and look how he ended up with him. So you see, I think it's critical being submissive to, you know, godly leadership or being honor your life sources are critical as far as your longevity and your success, and especially on hard ministry.
Absolutely.
Can I respond really quick to that as well?
Yeah.
And I think it's a really, really good question, because from a mental health standpoint, your pastor can also be a very good counselor for you as well. So one of the things that we keep talking about from a mental health standpoint is know when you need help and get it. It does not have to always be a doctor, it doesn't have to always be a psychiatrist, it doesn't have to be a psychologist. It can be a family member, it can be a spiritual advisor like your pastor. So if you're looking for good advice, if you're looking for just someone to talk to that's just gonna listen, that may give you some wise counsel, your pastor can be one of those. In Proverbs it says, plans fail because of lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. So if you're finding yourself in a rut, if you're finding yourself stuck, one of the major aspects of your mental health is also going to be your spiritual wealth as well. And so I know there are a lot of the mental health professionals who don't like to talk about spirituality, but I've learned when I was going through school, in my practice, spirituality is very important. Whether you want to call it spirituality, whether you want to call it religion, people are very connected to something that's greater than them, whoever that person is for them, depending on the religion that you're dealing with. So as a mental health, I have to be sensitive to the different religions. But for the sake of ITWLA, we are under the kingdom of God and those laws. But being connected to your spirituality is very key and very important to the state, whether it's poor or excellent, good mental health. So staying connected to your pastor, staying connected to church ministers, staying connected to someone that can pray with you, for you, if that's something that's major for you, can really help and aid in the status of your mental health?
Yeah, I think that is so important. You know, I am a product of submission to authority. You know, the way that I speak today is a result of Dr. Munroe's challenge to me, saying, I want you to teach Ignan, but I want you to use chemistry, mathematics, physics, and so forth. And I was at that particular time wondering, how in the world am I going to ever do that? Then he began to break it down for me. And because of my submission to my father in the faith, you know, I became who I am today. I'm traveling the world because of him. And so submission to authority is so important. Your pastor may not be a medical doctor like Charisa said, but they may be able to refer you to people like Charisa and myself, because they may have that type of connection. You know, we at ITWLA, we are a family. And so when there is an issue that goes on around us, we know who to connect who. You know, if there's a political issue, we may say, let's talk with Pastor Josephine Backhouse. So or if there is a medical issue, let's talk to Pepe, Ramnath, or a mental issue, so let's talk to Charisa. So just being under the authority, it may not necessarily be that the pastor may know all things, but that authority may refer you to somebody that they trust and they have known for quite some time. Because woe unto you if you're referred to somebody that has none of that type of background, and then you get hurt instead of, you know, be healed. So submission to authority is very, very important, because the Bible clearly says that God is the God of our fathers. And so when you respect and honor your fathers, you know, God is able to protect you under that type of covering.
Awesome, great. So moving right along, again, I want to get to as many questions as I can. So there was a question about that came up about depression. So mental illness, this is Fulgencio Sason. Mental illness brings us to depression. Is there a way to get out of this depression?
So for correction, depression is a mental illness. It's one of the mental disorders that can impede your mental health. And depression is only diagnosed as depression if you've had certain symptoms for a certain period of time. So I'll give you a prime example, and I can speak for my brother and I both. So when we were grieving, one of the symptoms of grief is depression. It's expected that that depression will come and then it should go. We should grow out of that in our grieving process. If 2-3 years go by and our friends and family and outsiders start to realize that he and I are in the same state or worse state that we were in 2 years before. So if we've always sat all the time, we're not doing any activities throughout the day, we have lost interest, we're not smiling, we are not eating or eating too much, we're not sleeping. Like if our family and friends start to see that for 2 years or more, or even 1.5 years, then there is concern for, man, there's something wrong. And so, you know, of course, only a professional can diagnose, but there can be some diagnosis of depression because those symptoms have been going on for a long period of time. The depression that we may be in as a global population due to the pandemic is short-term. It should be short-term. There are going to be a handful of people. I saw a statistic earlier that I was researching. Like there are going to be 75,000 people who are going to be in depression even 1 year or 2 after this. And then there are going to be some of us who, just because we're used to going to work all the time for the last 20 years, and all of a sudden we have to work from home, that's a level of depression. You have a right to feel that way. You have a right to feel some type of way about that, and that's okay. But 4 weeks into it, 2 months into it, I expect there's some expectation that if your mental health is at a optimal state, about 2 months into that, you would have adapted. You would have adjusted to your mindset. You would have adjusted your routine to, okay, now that I have gotten that out, now that I no longer, this is what it is, I can't control it, now what can I do? And so now your depression now turns into a little more positive thinking. Now let me do something different. So yes, there is a way to get out of that. And usually it's going to take some time. It's going to take others shorter, some others going to take longer, yes. But that transition period of going from what used to be a norm, what you're used to, what you're comfortable with, to what is now, that state of depression is safe and okay. But there is an expectation that you will get out of that. And how you get out of that is going to it's going to vary from person to person because of background, because of circumstances. If you're living life by yourself alone, it may take you longer. If you have a wife and children and friends and support, it may take you shorter. If you are living in this world alone with no spiritual backing, you don't have any superior authority, in this case, God, then it may take you a lot longer. So there are varying things that can help someone actually get stuck in depression, or that can help someone to, from one day to the next, totally get out of that.
Okay, awesome. So Dr. Pepe, real quickly, there's a question that came in from Vladimir, I think. I'm not even going to butcher your name. The question is, the use of turmeric as best anti-inflammatory is relevant. That I guess is the use of turmeric a good anti-inflammatory relevant for COVID prevention?
Let me say this again. I think definitely you would have to check with your local doctors. Turmeric is known from several research that we have encountered that does reduce inflammation. I will not say that it is a cure for it. I think you can use it prophylactically. You could use it as a precautionary, because I drink it too as well. I drink it as a tea with turmeric with black pepper in it is very important, because turmeric by itself doesn't get properly absorbed without the black pepper in it. And I drink it, but I would not say it is a cure for COVID, but I think it can help to some extent. And again, please check with your local doctor, because I am not a medical doctor. I'm a research scientist, microbiology type of a background. So I would use turmeric, definitely. I do use it. So I would advise that you use it, but still check with your doctors, in your local doctor in your area.
Okay, great advice. Charisa, this question is for you. What recommendations, this is from Stacy Algreen. What recommendations do you have for speaking to teenagers and young children about mental health?
The recommendations are the same. They don't change. They're pretty much the same. One of the recommendations that I give for, especially when you're dealing with young kids, especially for adults, because kids are just like the older generation, they are more at risk for substance abuse. They are more at risk for suicide. They are more at risk for your depression, because it really affects them more than it does your average middle age, especially the substance abuse, because the substance abuse, whether it's drug use, whether it's alcohol, whether it's tobacco use, that increases. And when that increases, that affects their health. That also affects the way they think. That also affects how they think and the clarity that they have. And then kids function in cliques. So if those cliques, and so those cliques are a blessing and a curse, because when kids function in cliques, then they have that support. But then when you have now social drinking, and you have social drug use, and you have social, then there's a norm and a culture that forms that's harder to be addressed. Or when they have cliques that they used to have that they can't have anymore because of social distancing, then you have this feeling of loneliness and feeling of anger and feeling of stress and feeling of loss of control. So now kids of that age now are acting out. They are, they're feeling this sense of loneliness. So now suicidal thoughts start to get in. And so my encouragement for kids is not without my recommendation to the adults that are around them as well. If we're talking anything under 18, there should always be some type of adults around, some type of supervision and authority who are there to assist with managing their level of behaviors or what they have access to. Even nowadays to social media. Social media is one of those things that, again, is a blessing and a curse, especially in the time that we are in. So is the media. So one of the things that they mentioned as far as helping with mental health, especially during a pandemic or a crisis that we're in, is turning off and decreasing your access to television and radio and news. Because sometimes, here we are talking about getting information, but sometimes too much information can be a detriment. Too much information can be a disadvantage. And so even myself, I find that back in March, April, May, I was listening to the news, but lately I have not, because now I realize that it's just too much. So every so often I would tune in, but I just want to make sure I know what's going on. But the every day, I realized that it was just affecting my optimism. And so, you want to make sure that kids, especially now that they're home with not being able to see friends and all they have is social media and all they have is themselves and themselves, it's important that kids aren't left to themselves. Encouraging them to read. Information is key. Information and knowledge is key. My dad said it all the time when my brother and I were younger, and I think I don't get it now until now that I'm older, but information is key. Making sure that they stay reading and not just with the phone in their hand and not just watching TV. Making sure that they're in contact with their friends, so they can't see them, but if they can talk on the phone or if they can do video chat like that, that's actually being encouraged, because that's normally what kids are doing. So those are just some of the recommendations that I have for that generation.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much for that response. Well, we're getting close to the time where we have to end, and I want to allow our speakers enough time to give their closing remarks. So we're gonna hold off on taking any more questions. Again, if you want to get in contact with our organization or become a part of our organization or get more information about the International Third World Leaders Association, send us an email. Email us at ITWLA@bfmmm.com. That's ITWLA@bfmmm.com. Send us an email. We'll send a response to you. We'll send an application. We'll send information about our organization to you. The video today will be available on our YouTube page. Once again, so if you've missed anything, you'll get an opportunity to rewatch the video, this presentation in its entirety, and it'll live on our YouTube channel for the rest of our lifetime. But I just want to give our speakers an opportunity to give their closing remarks. So I'm going to allow each of you, let's say 60 seconds. Just, say something in closing, just kind of wrap up what you discussed today and any encouragement you want to leave with the folks. So Pastor Jean, we can start with you.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for the privilege of not only being on this platform, but also to be with Pepe and Charisa. It was wonderful. I've learned so much from you guys, and thank you for sharing. But, a good verse I would like to leave with you is Romans chapter 5 says, not only so, but we rejoice in our suffering, knowing that the suffering produces endurance. In other words, when you know, it changes things. It changes your attitude towards everything. So in closing, I would like to, because in this, I could say right now, I'm grateful, not for the, I'm grateful for the pandemic. One of the reasons I was able, with God's grace, maximizing it. I finished my 6 books. Finish, panicking, finish, because I had time that I had couldn't have. Idea that I had, I was able to sit down and finish 6 books. So I'm grateful for that. So Uncle, I want to say, we need adversity to grow stronger and to deepen our roots. We need adversity to grow stronger and deepen our roots. Strength is important, but flexibility is essential to face life unpredictables. I repeat it again. Strength is important, but flexibility is essential and necessary to face life in unpredictables. Rely on the Holy Spirit. Keep your mind open. Cultivate the ability to adapt to any situation. And with God, you not only can, but you will succeed. The Lord bless you.
Thank you, Pastor John. Thank you very much. Charisa?
And in closing, I just want to focus on the opportunity of crisis versus the negativity of it. You know, mental health can be crisis can be an opportunity for us to evaluate, analyze, and address the current systems that we have and build better ones from a global standpoint. And individually, remember, there is no health without mental health. And how you address your own mental health, how you address and empathize with the mental health of others is going to determine how poor or how good your mental health is. There's a difference between mental health and mental illness. I'm talking about the overall well-being of who we are as a person, our mind, body, and spirit. Like, we are made up of those three things. Your body is just as important as your mind. Your mind is just as important as your spirit. And if any of those are out of sync, all three are out of sync. Like, as Pastor Pepe was talking, I was thinking that, like, the way that your mental health and your mental illness and what goes on in your mind affects your physical, and what's going on in your physical affects your mental, and then what goes on in your spirit affects both. So we want to make sure that we are holistically addressing and taking care of ourselves, mind, body, spirit, so we can affect families, so we can affect communities, and as an ITWLA associate, so that we can actually affect the global at large.
All right, thank you very much.
You.
And Dr. Pepe, I'll give you the last word, sir.
Yes, thank you so much. Hey, remember, everything that is broken can be fixed. Never underestimate the information that are hidden inside of that good old ancient book. It's called the Bible. Everything that God wants us to know is in there. It is the manual of our operation to optimum production, to optimum to optimize, you know, our abilities. It's inside of that book. I am a major supporter of that book. I believe that as kings, we can search out what is hidden in there, and we have the answers in that book for every crisis and every dilemma or pandemic that we will ever have to face in our lives. It's inside of that book. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pepe. Thank you to Pastor John. Thank you to Charisa once again. To all of the presenters that presented over the past 8 weeks. 8 weeks. Man, the information that was shared, you know, throughout these forums, I feel is invaluable. Again, everything is posted to our YouTube channel, ITWLA's YouTube channel, ITWLA. So if you missed one of the forums, you can go back, go to our YouTube channels and go back and watch the other 3 forums as well. And this one will be posted either later on today or sometime tomorrow, and you will also be emailed the link for the session today. So thanks again to our speakers. Thank you for joining in. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Just, you know, look for the opportunities in all crises that you go through, anything negative. Remember that whatever you call something, it becomes. So let's speak life into the things that we want to get life out of. All right. So thanks again. Thank you again to my speakers. And this has been a presentation from the International Third World Leaders Association. And thank you guys for joining in.